had the pleasure of interviewing Ben Carson and his wife over the years, and he is a very, very patient, quiet, reserved individual. In fact, his staff, if you believe a little scuttlebutt, they wanted to get a little more vinegar on the stump, get a little angry. He doesn't do that. So you know when he's upset. And I think it's fair to say today, reading in between the lines in his statements, he's upset. He just doesn't shout about it. The good doctor joining me right now. And I guess the issue, Dr. Carson, it's very good to have you, is this Cruz campaign apology, and from the Senator Cruz himself, on any confusion the night of the Iowa caucuses, and that they might have been hastening this talk of you skipping the race, when in fact the early tweets and message from your campaign was that you were heading back to get new clothes and get back out on the stump. Be that as it may, he apologized. Not good enough. Why is it not good enough?
Well, I always will accept the apology as a Christian, recognizing that we're all imperfect human beings. The question is, what's being done about it? When you see that there's a problem, what do you do about it? I noticed in my campaign that things were not as I expected. I talked about it, nothing changed. So I made some substantial changes, and things are much, much better now. If, in fact, Senator Cruz does not agree with the things that were done, with the deceit that was carried out, then I would expect that he would do something about it. If he does nothing about it, then it means he agrees with it.
All right, so that means someone has to lose their job. Someone has to go, is what you're saying.
I can't see how you do it otherwise. Or at least those people who are responsible should come out publicly and admit what they did and ask for forgiveness. But to simply try to brush it under the rug and say it doesn't matter doesn't make any sense. You know, those caucuses, my wife went to some of them, and at one of them, one of the Cruz people had spoken before she came in and, you know, tried to dissuade people and say that I wasn't really going to stay in the race. And she wasn't supposed to speak, but the people saw her. They wanted her to speak, and she did.
So they knew who she was. But why did you release, or your campaign release that tweet that night, confusing people? Because we saw it too when we were having our round-the-clock Fox Business coverage, and then that came up, and it confused a lot of people. Thinking, is he dropping out? What?
It may have confused people, but let me just finish that story now. She spoke. And, you know, they were wildly enthusiastic, and we won that precinct. You know, how many times would that have been duplicated? A lot of, you know, I had gotten a lot of intelligence that we were going to have tremendous showing that night, and we did not have a tremendous showing, and I believe that had something to do with it. But whether it did or not, the real issue is this. The reason I got in this race, one of the reasons, is because I'm so tired, like the rest of Americans, of deceit, deception, and no consequences, no responsibility for anything. You know, look what happened with the IRS and Lois Lerner. No responsibility.
No, I understand, Doctor, why you're upset, but I was actually looking at how you did during the caucuses. You received a little over 9%, 9.5% of the votes, better than 17,300 votes. You were polling a lot worse than that going into the caucuses, so you did a lot better than expected. So I'm wondering,
yeah, but I think it would have been a lot better than that. It would have been, yeah, I do believe that, because you know, we were seeing very large crowds, standing room only, doing double events, and you know, so many people were telling me that they had changed their mind and they couldn't wait, you know, and then to have, you know, your hopes disabused, somebody come along and say, well, he's out of it. That's very disappointing. I just, you know, that's water under the bridge. But the real question is, what will be done about it? Or what will people take from this?
You know, there's nothing illegal. Even in the worst case, if everything you said was true, and this was a Machiavellian plot to fool voters into thinking you were out of the race, you know, I'm told by lawyers, I'm not one myself, Doctor, but that's not illegal.
Yeah. It's not Machiavellian. Now, let's not go quite that far. But the fact of the matter is, it's politics as usual. Isn't that what we don't want? And I would hope that Senator Cruz, if, as he told me, he didn't know about this and he doesn't agree with it, will come out and do something about it to indicate that he really doesn't agree.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes them. Admit it. hey, I'm making your case stronger, not weaker. Don't be upset with me.
I'm upset because Carson got jobbed. This isn't what our democracy is supposed to be.
Right.
This was used to damage a campaign in which Carson has spent a lot of money and time. And I'm not rooting for Carson. I would do this for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. This is wrong, and it's out of control, and it better stop.
Well, let's look at the second part of this, because at 7 p.m., the Cruz campaign, Spence Rogers, sends out a tweet, and the tweet is headline, Press says that Carson is going to take a break. And then it says he's going home, and he has a big announcement later this week, so tell all the Carson people to caucus with the Cruz people. This goes out at 7 p.m. Now, the campaign, you just had Rick Tyler, the spokesman, on, who defended this by saying we only used his own words. Well, nowhere in Chris Moody's conversation with the Carson people does he say, I'm taking a break, and nowhere does he say, I'm having a big announcement later this week. They sent it out at 7 o'clock. At 7:53, the Carson campaign sends out a thing saying, we're here staying in the race, and we're going to New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Yeah.
And at 8:20, the national co-chairman of the Carson campaign, Steve King, sends out a tweet saying, looks like Carson is getting out of the race. Now, they knew at this point that this was inaccurate. Now, let's also look at one other thing. They say, you know, Senator Cruz in his initial explanation about this said we were sending it to our team, leaving the implication, I suspect to most viewers, that this had to do with sending it out to the staff members. No. They sent this to their nearly 1,500 precinct captains. There are 1,500 precincts in the state, and they sent this message from Spence Roberts to those precinct captains. Now, why does that matter? Well, the gap between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is 6,239 votes. There are 1,500 precincts. Do the math. If this message caused precinct captains in the precincts to tell the Carson people, your guy's getting out, he's having a big announcement later this week, caucus with us, if that cost Carson 4 votes per precinct to switch to Cruz, then Cruz beats Trump. If he doesn't switch 4, then he loses.
And Trump is calling for an investigation, a federal investigation into this whole thing today. All right, that was a good explanation, and I want people to know how serious this is. But nobody gets a pass on this, all right? The Cruz campaign doesn't get a pass, and CNN doesn't get a pass.
Breaking tonight, former vice presidential candidate and Donald Trump supporter Sarah Palin is slamming the Cruz campaign on her Facebook page, writing in part, Senator Ted Cruz was spot on when he once noted that millions of Americans are asking for accountability and truth, which is why, she goes on, it's so curious and saddens us, this lack of accountability with the lies of Cruz's own campaign. She continues, Cruz's campaign chairman, U.S. Representative Steve King, is lying. He told voters Carson was dropping out of the presidential race immediately before the Iowa caucus. The Cruz campaign's actions to destroy a good man's efforts to serve are no different than Obama's practice of not holding anyone accountable. Joining us now, founder of The Blaze, Glenn Beck. Glenn, good to see you. So,
how are you?
Sarah Palin outright accusing the Cruz campaign of lying. Their explanation is, we thought he was dropping out based on a CNN report. We didn't see the follow-up report saying he wasn't dropping out. We're sorry.
Okay, let me just get this straight. First of all, I don't want to say anything bad about Sarah Palin. I don't know what she is thinking. I don't know where she's coming from. She's now calling Steve King, one of the most honest, forthright people that I know, a liar. It is absolutely incredible what people will stoop to. Let's just look at this, because you can see the timeline. CNN went on the air and said that that he was going to leave, Carson was going to leave the campaign trail to get a change of clothes. Does that sound reasonable to you, Megan?
I can tell you, Brett Baer and I were sitting on the set, and we all saw it, and we all thought the same thing, which is...
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You know, they have clothing stores in New Hampshire. But this comes a day at this, I just want to make sure I get this right. WMUR on Sunday announced that Sam Pym, the guy who raised about $4 million for Carson, was now switching over to Cruz. Then on Monday, before the I've got to go home and get a change of clothes for a few days happened, every single person in the New Hampshire super PAC for Carson quit and switched over to Cruz. All of those, plus the change of clothes, would lead any reasonable person to think that he is switching. Voting in Iowa is different than voting anywhere else in a primary. This is a caucus. Your job is to go and try to sway other people. So if I have information that the super PAC guy just switched to Cruz, all of the people in New Hampshire just quit and moved over to Cruz, and he's going for a change of clothes when he's only got about 8 days before the New Hampshire primary, it doesn't make any sense. And any responsible candidate would say, look, I don't know, CNN is now tweeting and saying that it looks like he may be getting out of the race. Go there and make sure that those Carson people who are most closely aligned to Ted Cruz know this and see if they want to switch.
Let me ask you this,
That's
Glenn,
totally reasonable.
She also goes on, as I just read in this same post, to say the Cruz's campaign's actions to destroy a good man's effort to serve. She's talking about Ben Carson.
I can't believe this.
Donald Trump was the one with the belt buckle saying how stupid are the people of Iowa when Ben Carson was surging, and calling Ben Carson's story, just suggesting it was all
but that's
lies.
opinion versus putting an outright vicious lie.
Donald Trump was saying that Ben Carson couldn't be president because he calls people liars all the time. He called Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell a liar. We know that to be true. We are being turned on each other, and there's no reason to be turned on each other. A circus performer is turning the conservatives against one another. You couldn't have planned this better if you were a DNC operative. We have in Bernie Sanders, an old man that is a socialist, that just through the life expectancy, the normal life expectancy, should be dead before his term ends.
Oh boy.
He's a socialist. Then on the other side, you have somebody who their own people say is what was it, 80% coming out of Iowa? Her own voters said 80% said she was untrustworthy. It's like going hunting for a deer that's spray painted orange and has no legs. The conservatives should be able to win this with anyone. You know what? This camera could beat them. This oil can could beat those two. And what are we doing? We're looking and we're nitpicking when we have the most conservative man since Calvin Coolidge. We have 4 Supreme Court justices that might die in the next 4 years
You're writing everybody off. You're getting depressing. Everyone's dying.
Or retire.
Sanders dying. Half the Supreme Court is dying. I gotta go because we're dying on time. But I'm going to hold you over because we have more to discuss.
All right.
I didn't even get to ask him why he has an oil can sitting next to him.
Candidates in Monday night's caucuses. Trump spent the least per vote, just $300 each, compared to $600 for Marco Rubio and $700 for Ted Cruz, while Ben Carson put down $3,100 per vote. Ow. And Jeb Bush spent a whopping $5,200 per vote.
Those people would have voted. Let's get the cash.
And by the way, that doesn't include the super PACs, which I guess Trump doesn't have a super PAC. Rubio, Cruz, all the others have super PACs. You have the super PACs. Those numbers for everybody but Trump skyrocket. Anyway, Trump commented on the amount that Bush spent. Not surprised.
You know, you could have won the election. Just promised everybody $1,000 and you could have won it. You would have saved money, right? You would have won. You would have saved a lot of money. That's got to be a record, right? Is that in the Guinness Book? Would you check the Guinness Book of World Record?
Oh my gosh. Trump also kept his focus
It's just, I know. People thought he was going to be thrown off by coming in second place. No.
For a second he was.
Yes.
Well, for about 4 minutes when he gave that confession.
But
4 minutes, and then I was silent on Twitter for 10 hours.
Well, he might have gone to sleep.
And he may have back in New York.
Yeah, the thing is...
But he wasn't thrown off, you're right.
Yeah, he wasn't thrown off.
Came roaring back.
I said this yesterday, Caddy. It was dead serious. This is a guy who held a press conference in New York City when he was $9 billion in debt.
Right.
And somebody who started an election goes, hey, excuse me, could anybody who's $9 billion in debt raise their hands in the room? And he's looking around and goes, okay, none of you know what it's like to be $9 billion in debt. I do. And he goes, I'll take it. And then he turned to the banks and goes, go ahead, bankrupt me. That's fine. You lose all your money. Yeah. Or you can work with me, and I'll get really rich, and you get all your money back with interest. So what I'm saying is losing by and I'm serious, I'm making a dead serious point here. Losing by 3,000 votes in an Iowa caucus is not as big as the setbacks this guy's been through before, where you're $9 billion in debt. And that, for people that think he was going to melt and go away, it's one more example of them underestimating.
Anyone who watched all of Ted Cruz's far too long, rambling, overly flamboyant speech last night would say that was his Howard Dean moment. Oh, and in New Hampshire last night, we'll let Howard comment on that. Trump accepted...
Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Ah!
Is Hillary starting to sound like Howard Dean on the campaign trail? Howard Dean's
comment on that. Trump accepted the endorsement of former U.S. Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts and countered Cruz's recent attack that Trump supports universal health care.
Tremendous. I have been opposed to Obamacare from the day they conceived it. And Ted Cruz comes out with an ad that I'm in favor of Obamacare. Can you believe this? All of a sudden I see an ad or something. Donald Trump is in favor of Obamacare. And people are calling, oh, I thought you were against it. That's too bad. What kind of people do we have running for office? No, it's honestly, really, really dishonest. And I think I know why. You know why? Because he was born in Canada.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
That was fantastic.
Okay.
What a funny line. You know what? What Canucks all lie, right? You know what I'm saying?
Howard.
What's that move?
I need to know
Oh, my God.
when he said Howard Dean moment, what exactly was he saying?
Could you do it,
please?
The popular meme is that the Scream speech destroyed the campaign, which turned out not to be true. What destroyed the campaign is I came in third when I was supposed to come in first.
That would do it.
So Donald is not only a showman, but he doesn't know anything about history, which is
Let me ask you a question. Third is not first, right?
Well,
correct?
Yeah.
Third is not first. Will you please call Marco Rubio for me? Let him know.
I'm skeptical about spin, as we all are, but Marco, I think, was the very biggest winner on Thursday.
In third.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, Kathy, here's why. There's two primaries going on here at the same time. One is to who's going to be the establishment candidate against Cruz and Trump, and the other is who's going to get the nomination. Rubio broke out of the pack of Christie, Rubio, Bush, and Kasich in a big way. Now this New Hampshire is big for him. If he comes in third after Cruz and Trump, he's on the way, and the other guys are dead.
Do you think it's wrong for her to go to places like UConn and also the University of Buffalo, a college she once represented, get paid $275,000 for a 45-minute speech?
Joe, I got a real problem with people, receiving, for an hour's work to earn $200,000 plus. I've got a real problem with that. But it's not just, speakers' fees. I think what we're hearing from young people is a real disgust with the campaign finance system in which billionaires and Wall Street are putting in huge sums of money. You may have read recently Secretary Clinton's super PAC raised $25 million. $15 million of that came from Wall Street. And what we're trying to do is do it in a very different way, get small individual contributions averaging $27 apiece. So I think this whole thing of money and money in politics is something the American people are deeply concerned about.
We're up earlier today. Nobody around the table, from Bob Woodward to Howard Dean to Cokie Roberts, had ever seen anything like it before. It was the split of the young voters in Iowa. Bernie Sanders, 84%. Hillary Clinton, 14% in the youth vote. We couldn't explain the huge disparity, historic disparity. Why do you think you did so well with young voters, and why do you think she's doing so poorly with young voters?
Well, Joe, I wish I could give you, a full and significant explanation. I don't have it, but this is what I'll say. Two things. Number one, by definition, young people are idealistic, and they want our country to do more in many ways than we are currently doing. They are concerned about institutional racism. They're concerned about a broken criminal justice system. They're very engaged on the issue of climate change and the need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. And obviously, there's the economic reason. Look, these young people, for the first time in the modern history of America, are looking at a situation where they may have a lower standard of living than their parents. Well, almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. They're smart. They see that. And they want to see an economy that works for all, not just the billionaire class.
So Bill Clinton said that, you're addressing these issues by giving emotionally satisfying promises to people, echoing other claims that some of your promises are fantastical and they actually can't ever be carried out. I asked Senator Tom Harkin when we were in Iowa what was Hillary Clinton's message, and the first thing he said to me was that she can win, and insinuating that you're unelectable. Given these claims from the opposing campaign, could you please respond? Are you electable?
Sure. Well, let me respond in two ways. Tell me why it is utopian. Tell me it is why it is impractical that the United States do what every other major country on earth is doing, guaranteeing health care to all people. We are the odd guys out. Number two, tell me why it is impractical to say that with massive wealth and income inequality, yeah, the rich and large corporations should start paying their fair share of taxes. Why is it impractical to say that when our infrastructure is crumbling, we should rebuild our infrastructure and create 13 million jobs? So I don't think these ideas are impractical. What they are is saying, yeah, to make these kinds of changes, we are going to have to stand up to Wall Street, to corporate America, to the large campaign
donors out there that yesterday Esquire condemned that some people that are supporting Hillary Clinton are engaging in almost fear-mongering and red baiting, suggesting that a Bernie Sanders victory is a victory for a socialist revolution. A lot of over-the-top rhetoric that Hillary Clinton herself is embracing. Would you like to address that?
I would, Joe. I think people understand that when I talk about democratic socialism, we're talking about building on some fantastic programs that are so important to the American people. Social Security, guess what? It's a socialist program. Medicare is a single-payer health care system for the seniors. I think it should be expanded to all people. You got the post office, a great socialist institution, the Veterans Administration. What I believe is that government does have an intrinsically important role to play to make sure that all of our kids, regardless of their education, regardless of the income of their families, get the education they need. And that's why I believe that public colleges and universities should be tuition free. I believe that in the United States we should join the rest of the industrialized world and have a guaranteed paid family and medical leave. These are not such radical ideas, and I think that there are folks out there trying to scare the American people. That's unfortunate. And the other thing that I do believe, Joe, and you know this, you've heard me say it a million times, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when the 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom 50% of our people, you know what? I do believe the wealthy and large corporations should start paying their fair share of taxes.
And so I want to ask you also to define, when you talk about a revolution, define a revolution, because of course everybody does this. We've been talking about the Reagan Revolution for 40 years, and nobody suggested that Republicans were going to have tanks roll down Pennsylvania Avenue. We talked about the Gingrich Revolution in 1994, when it may have seemed for some Democrats like tanks were about to roll down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, I was one of them. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I was there with you. You were like running for you said, where's the fallout shelter? But I'm concerned that people are taking your words when you talk about a revolution, when you're obviously talking about a peaceful political revolution, and they're twisting and distorting those words to suggest that you are somehow a commie, and I'm talking about Democrats saying this.
Joe, I think you're right.
Talk about what you mean when you say revolution.
Good. This is what I mean, Joe, and you're absolutely right, and there are people who are doing that, and I think that is pretty pathetic. What do I mean by a revolution? I will tell you. Political revolution. That is in the last election that we had in November 2014. Do you know what? 63% of the American people didn't vote. 80% of young people didn't vote. To my mind, what a political revolution means is a revitalization of American democracy. You know what I think? I want to see America have one of the highest voting turnouts of any major country on earth, not one of the lowest voting turnouts.
And looking at really some slimy politics.
So what we saw was just the beginning of a string of tweets. He tweeted, Ted Cruz didn't win Iowa. He stole it. That's why all of the polls were so wrong and why he got far more votes than anticipated. Bad. That's where our show ended yesterday. Like, what? What? And then, based on the fraud committed by Senator Cruz during the Iowa caucus, either a new election should take place or Cruz results nullified. Early this morning, Trump tweeted a photo of the voter violation mailer Cruz sent Iowans, calling it a misdemeanor at minimum. Trump kept up his attacks on Cruz last night before a massive audience of over 10,000 people in Little Rock, Arkansas, where Trump was 2 hours late, but few left before he spoke.
Actually, I think I came in first because if you take a look, okay, you know. Oh, that voter fraud. You know, these politicians are brutal.
But first of all, over 10,000 people in Arkansas. His plane had problems, had to hold in Nashville. Over 10,000 people wait 2 hours to hear him speak. He had 5,000
on a Wednesday night
a couple of nights ago, while other campaigns are bragging about having 750 up in New Hampshire.
I don't know. Cruz responded to Trump's allegations by accusing him of having a, quote, Trumper tantrum.
It is no surprise that Donald is throwing yet another temper tantrum, or if you like, yet another Trumper tantrum. But at the end of the day, the Iowa people spoke. Donald Trump guaranteed a victory in Iowa, and then he lost. I wake up every day and laugh at the latest thing Donald has tweeted, because he's losing it. We need a commander-in-chief, not a Twitterer-in-chief. I mean, we're liable to wake up one morning, and Donald, if he were president, would have nuked Denmark.
Okie doke. And Marco Rubio also took offense at Cruz's dirty campaign tactics in Iowa.
Obviously, we've all seen the reports of the rumors they spread about Ben Carson, and we know those weren't accurate, and I thought it was unfair to Ben. And, ultimately, I think it goes back to what I said before, and that is the willingness to say or do anything. In this case, spread a false rumor about Ben Carson.
You know, Willie, when I campaigned, I was aggressive and fought hard.
Yeah, I just have
look at.
I just have to say, as a Dane myself, the Danish Vikings. Not that I approve of a lot of their behavior. Picking on unarmed monasteries does not make you a warrior. However, all the other battles, including Valentinian Guard, and the Eastern Roman Empire, kicked ass and took names and never lost up against similarly armed opponents, not monasteries, mind you, but making Denmark sound like weak as opposed to, well, I don't know, I'll take a Danish berserker like yours truly versus Cruz's Cuban background any day of the week and twice on Tuesdays. He's a punk.
I mean, I look at certain things that other politicians do. One, lying about somebody saying they're getting out of the race. And whoever spread it would be fired immediately. And that violation, that voter violation mail piece, and I asked myself, well, gee, what if somebody came to me and I tried to put myself back in the position? I literally would say, what the hell's wrong with you? You're going to scare voters? Ted Cruz won Iowa. I'm not so sure, though, that in these last two tactics, he didn't accumulate some scar tissue that's not going to isolate him from some of the voters moving forward, but more importantly, from everybody else in the Republican field who will not endorse him now. I would like to throw the right honorable gentleman to a Washington Post article written in May. Hillary Clinton got paid between $250,000 and $500,000 at Hamilton College. Also, she got paid, let's see, here we go, Simmons College, State University of New York at Albany. Actually, that's Bill Clinton, forgive me. University of Miami. She also got paid, let's see, well, no, that's it. So we had, University of Connecticut. So we had about 4 or 5.
picking the feathers out of
Bernie Sanders is going to be our guest in just about a half hour.
Yeah. By the way, I just want you to know, you doing this, we're going to see that on the internet.
In one of those
We'll be right back.